Hey Bat fans, Luke here, back ready to talk another Bat classic, and this one will be Batman the Chalice. And when I normally, talk about the Bat classic, I like kind of do the ones that not too many people talk about now. Not that saying that they're not as good, but ones that again, you talk about the stories of today, um, especially prior to the New 52. There's certain ones that people still kind of bring up, like No Man's Land, Nightfall, Black Mirror, Grant Morrison's run, so forth and so on. And those are ones again. Those are ones I can do, but I really don't put an immediate. I think I need to do so because so many people have kind of talked about it before. That's why I kind of like doing books like The Chalice because again, it's not like say I'm not saying these are classics, like these are just the creme de la creme of Batman stories. Is that I think they're okay, but again, it's ones that when you start talking, older Batman stories, especially to the audience of today, there's ones you just don't hear that much about. And the Chalice is one of them, which kind of befuddles me in a way because if you look at the creative team, this is actually written by Chuck Dixon. And if you don't know, Chuck Dixon, circa like No Man's Land, that era, uh, Chuck Dixon had his like hand like in full force in the Bat world, and not just in Batman, but if you're looking like Robin and Nightwing, Azrael, so forth and so on. It was everywhere. And this, if you're kind of looking at where to kind of put this story and kind of context in your back continuity, I kind of put this right around that time, that No Man's Land circa time period. But I kind of call this kind of like the prelude to the Ra's al Ghul story, circa this time period. In that you have this story, which I think kind of again it's kind of like a prelude, which then kind of goes into the story Contagion, which then bleeds into the story Legacy. So I'm kind of putting this like right in the beginning of that forefront. So after No Man's Land, before Contagion and Legacy, I think literally the Chalice is like right before Contagion. So again, this is like right in the height of the Chuck Dixon influence on Batman, but yet today not too many people talk about it. Before I go into the story, one thing that is, I think, gonna be one that I think either kind of turns people on or off into this story. Um, Not say the story, the book. Other than maybe the context of the story, which we'll get to that in a minute, is the art. The art is quite unique, in that it kind of has kind of like a paint type of appeal to it. In that thing's really flushed out. It's kind of opaque and dark. At the color palette is extremely saturated in here, which is okay. But you see some things that are really good. So while it might be okay for some I can see it not being as all that great. The Batman designs, I will say, is I think are some of the weaker parts. And then you see things like, I mean, that's what I'm talking about. It's like really dark and saturated. Um, Penguin there. One thing I kind of will, I'm not gonna say rub you the wrong way, but the way that, let's say, wounds are kind of depicted in here, like this one is actually in the beginning of the story where Batman gets shot in the leg. It's just like a big red circle in his leg, which I got it. It's maybe making too much out of it than probably what it is, but I'm not gonna say it needs to have a level of realism because again, when you go in kind of like this painting type style, one that John Van Fleet actually utilizes, there are just certain things that just kind of just seems out of place. And then, like that one where you say you've seen the gunshot wound to the leg, or when someone gets impaled by a sword in the gut, it just looks, the technique used to kind of put that on paper and kind of accentuate the story or the actual wound behind it, it just seems kind of odd. Um, so just kind of just want to get the art out of the way. That's it's one I think either some people are gonna like it or not like it. Me, I think I'm kind of like right in the middle. I think I had some parts to it again that I thought was really good, but I thought some parts it was really just kind of Made me scratch my head a little bit. But anyway, the story. What this story is basically is, I can really sum it down into just a real short, digestible chunk. Is that Batman is given the Holy Grail, and he is charged with protecting it. And in doing so, there's a couple groups of people there who actually knows Bruce Wayne is holding the Holy Grail, and they're coming after it. And Batman finds a way to ward off the three waves of folks coming to get it, and protects the Grail. That's basically a story. And what I like about what Chuck Dixon did with the story here is that he took that concept and really found a way to make it interesting. But you're gonna really think that just the way I'm kind of hyping this up is that this is a great book. I'm not necessarily saying that. We'll say that toward the end. But there are some really good redeeming qualities in this story. One of the ones I think it's really redeeming is that you get a lot of good cameos in here. You get Two Faces in here. Azrael makes an appearance. Barbara Gordon, Oracle, I call her. This is definitely Oracle at this point, actually. Yet at her post in the oh god, I'm gonna say the Belfry, but that's now in Detective Comics. Her headquarters up in the Watchtower. She makes an appearance. Harvey Bullock, right? Renee Montoya makes an appearance in this. Obviously, you saw Commissioner Gordon. Two-Face, I think I already said Two-Face. Catwoman makes an appearance. Obviously, Alfred. And lastly, I think the main villains. Did I say Catwoman? I think I did, Catwoman. But the main, let's say, quote-unquote, villains in this. Now, Penguin is not really a main villain, but he's one of the waves. So, okay, the ones that really are the ones that make the appearance, but are kind of like the, to use a wrestling term, the heels of the story, is Penguin, and then Ra's al Ghul and Talia al Ghul. So you get a whole cast of members of the Bat world to show up in this story. Two-Face's appearance in the story, it's really one that I really don't think it was necessary. I think it served up a plot device in that he's the one that actually shoots Bruce in the leg, and the bullet is actually lodged in his artery, and he can't take it out, so Alpha really can't do nothing about it. But that kind of builds into the part of the story, actually, what happens. In that there was an individual who's actually guarding the Holy Grail. In this case, and some people might not know what the Holy Grail is. If you watch the movie, the Da Vinci Code, the Holy Grail is actually a person. In this case, it is literally a cup, and that is referenced that this was the cup used by Jesus at the Last Supper, and also by an individual, and I can't remember the name, who actually captured the blood of Jesus as he was on the cross. And with the blood of Christ, and actually that cup used at the Last Supper, it kind of gives some sort of immortal powers to individuals who may utilize the cup. And there was this person who was guarding it, and lo and behold, the Wayne family is an ancestor of this group of individuals who were kind of charged to protect the Grail, much like the person who was passing that along. It was actually sent to Thomas Wayne, but lo and behold, Thomas is no longer alive, which that's how Bruce gets contacted. And this I kind of like. You see these in different types of stories where you actually get kind of some of the back history of the Wayne family. You've seen it in the Court of Owls with Bruce's grandfather. You've seen it in the story The Gates of Gotham. We actually had the Waynes and the Kane families actually kind of fleshed out in their history. You've seen it in stories such as the novel Wayne of Gotham. You're seeing it in portrayed in some characters in an Elseworld story in the Batman Telltale series, video games and comics. And you can go on and on. Obviously, duh. And what we're seeing right now in Metal, the Wayne family, and its ties to Barbados, and obviously that and Morrison's run. You can go on and on, but I do like when you kind of get some of the tie between the Wayne family and prior history, and all comes kind of full circle, and somehow Bruce gets kind of captured into it. But anyway, Bruce actually does um, take the challenge of taking the chalice and protecting it from those who are coming to get it, which you lead into. There's three big groups of people coming to get it. Penguin, he's actually trying to get it, how he finds out about the Holy Grail and how Bruce Wayne actually has it. It's not really flushed out that much. So that's a kind of hiccup there by Chuck Dixon, and he actually hires Catwoman to actually do the heist. And then we have this other group of people who claim to be descendants of actually Jesus Christ, and much like the League of Shadows, if you would, or League of Assassins, they're a group, or the Knights Templar, if you're actually watching the Da Vinci Code. Uh, um, they actually want the cup, obviously because of its tie with their ancestry. And then the third wave is obviously Ra's al Ghul, which you would think it would make sense for Ra's al Ghul to have it for Ra's al Ghul, in that he has his Lazarus pits, but with the thing with the Lazarus pits and with the stories, this is where if you read it for the first time, I don't want to spoil too much, but I do kind of want to mention because this is kind of one that kind of made me scratch my head a little bit. In that they're not, the power of the Lazarus pits are not eternal. In that every so often, it's kind of like, have like a rechargeable battery. You plug it up against the wall, you charge it, you got some time, but at some point you're going to have to recharge. And you see stories of Ra's al Ghul kind of like that, where he actually is trying to find different Lazarus pits so he can maintain his immortality. Whereas in the stories, it inferred that the cup, once used, it actually can bring eternal life. And again, which will make sense why Ra's will want it, but I do not want to spoil it because again, I'm going to leave some meat and bones. You want to read the story, but he doesn't want to use it for his own. He wants to use it for someone else, which kind of ties into the ending, and it really, I thought, really didn't make sense why the actual motive Ra's actually wanted the chalice for. And we'll kind of leave it at that because again, I don't want to spoil too much in case you want to get your hands on reading it. So basically, what happens again? Batman actually does so successfully, defends these three groups who basically come all at one time. Bruce with the assistance of Alfred, because basically Alfred and Catwoman take care of the group that claim to be ancestors of Christ, and kind of negate each other out. So by default, actually, now that I think about it, Alfred and Catwoman kind of take care of the first two groups, where Penguin and the group of people claim to be ancestors of Jesus, but Catwoman was the person that was hired by Penguin to get. Okay, I might just blew your mind. But anyway, so actually more credit to them than to Bruce. But Bruce, obviously, by stopping Ra's al Ghul, and even then, I would say Bruce really didn't fully stop Ra's al Ghul. I think Talia might have more of a play in that. I hope I didn't spoil it. No, we'll be okay. Still leave some meat on the bones. But that's generally the premise. One thing I found it interesting, which kind of leads into some of the parts where it kind of made me scratch my head. So Batman brings actually the chalice to Barbara Gordon, who is clearly Oracle at this point. And if you are unaware of what we're talking about when I mean clearly Oracle. This is not the Barbara Gordon we know of today, New 52 and Beyond and Rebirth. This is the one that's in the wheelchair actually being Oracle. And Bruce relays the point about how, remember that gunshot wound I said in the beginning of the story, where what he does to actually test the Grail to see if it actually is what it is. He actually poured some liquid from the Grail into the gunshot wound and actually got rid of the bullet. So he confirmed it to be what it is, and he's given the cup to Barbara to do some analysis of it, but she kind of discards it as not really being what he claims it to be. Again, she's at this point, she's in the wheelchair, and with the power that Bruce is kind of inferring what it could do, I just didn't understand why Barbara was so quick to dismiss it, because it was really done in 2 pages. And it was just like, really, this thing could have led to something to really provide a breakthrough and cure the physical injury, or heal the physical injury that's putting you in the wheelchair to begin with. So I was kind of wondering what was going on there. Adriel, his part was actually really interesting. But again, it was only there for like 2 pages. These cameos, like Two-Face's cameo, was there for like 4 pages. Azrael's was like 2, 3, I think. Bullock and Montoya's, there were like 1 or 2. So save like Penguin, Catwoman, Al Ghul's, everyone's cameos is like real short. Whereas I think this fits Azrael. This is like Jean-Paul Valley, Azrael. It fits him to a T, and I think he could have been utilized so much more in the story. And he was just there to kind of basically pass on the notion that, hey, you don't really know what you're dealing with here, this Chalice thing, people are going to come after you, you don't understand the power and influence we're going to have, blah, blah, blah. And that was it. I think Azrael really could have had a lot more part of the story than he actually did. What else? But the thing that really kind of bothered me a little bit about this story is the ending. The ending was very anticlimactic in that it was going to be a big showdown between Batman and Ra's, and it basically gets summed up in about 6 pages. And basically what happens is Talia's like, hey, the whole reason you went after the cup, it's not necessary. And I'm really paraphrasing here because, again, I don't want to sit there and spoil everything. It's not necessary. Ra's goes, okay, let's move on. And then they leave. And that's basically it. In that, also, Bruce gets impaled by a sword in the stomach, and he just walks away. And then, after that, Bruce goes back to the cave, realizes, like, hey, this chalice, the Holy Grail, it's not in a safe place right now. I'm not the right person to actually be the one to protect it. It's not in the right hands right now. I gotta get it in the right hands. It turned out to be Superman at the very end at a cafe somewhere. 2 pages done. Oh yeah, another cameo. Duh, Clark Kent. But that was really the ending. It felt like this book was missing about 1/3 of it, which was like the ending, because I really think throughout the story it had some really good potential to actually go into a good climactic ending, but the ending was executed in a manner which was kind of shocking. Again, this is Chuck Dixon we're talking about, so I don't know if he was constrained by pages, time, or what, but the ending just wrapped up really quickly, and I thought there was a whole lot more meat to the bone that he could have really chewed on to really flesh out the ending, because again, it really did have, I think, the promise to actually really wrap up really good and kind of elevate this from sort of a mediocre book, which it is kind of now, which kind of maybe bleed into the score I'm going to give it, into something that was actually really interesting, that kind of really, again, really set the tone for this, the Ra's al Ghul era of Batman stories circa No Man's Land, kind of lead this into, like, this be a really good precursor into, Contagion, and then Legacy, so forth and so on, and even into like Evolution and stuff like that. But again, it was just wrapped up really quickly. The decision by Bruce to give it to Clark, I get it, he's Superman, but why is he the right person to guard the Grail? I hate to say it, some things with Bruce, one of his things that might be his downfall sometimes is his ego. So sometimes I don't think he'll sit there and say, hey, this is something I physically can't do, but Clark Kent or Superman can. While it makes sense, I just don't see Batman doing it all that much. And to be honest, and even then the book doesn't tell you where Clark actually takes it. I mean, short of like taking it to like outer space or something, even the Fortress of Solitude, I think Bruce has about the same capabilities and resources to protect the Grail as Clark did, other than to maybe say, hey, they won't put two and two together. Clark can't be a reporter from the Daily Planet is the one protecting the Grail. Okay, maybe if you want to go into that sort of logic, okay, but either way, the ending kind of did wrap up in that type of manner. So anyway, coming full circle, the Chalice is one. It's unique in that I think there's a lot of lost potential in it, but what you're reading is still okay. Again, the art might be the tipping point. Some people are going to like it. Some people are not going to be too much of a fan of it. Myself, again, I think I'm like kind of right in the middle, which kind of where I put this story. I'm going to give it a 2.5 out of 5 in that it's one that, again, it could have done so much better. I think the ending is one that really hurt it here, because if the ending was flushed out anywhere better, we could have been talking like a 3.5. Interesting story matter. I know some people will kind of say, if those who have read it maybe talked about in the past, that the religious overtones in this story is not really a Batman story. Myself, I think the religious undertones in the story were done in a way that it was not overt. It wasn't the preponderance of the book. Also, you're talking the Holy Grail, obviously. There is some sort of religious tone to it, only because of the subject matter that the Holy Grail is actually tied into. But I think this is one, again, it's not really in your face. It's subtly done, and one I don't think would be very offensive to anyone really reading it, unless I'm not going to go there. But either way, I don't think there's much to it than that. I mean, other than, again, it's really, if you're talking the Holy Grail, you kind of have to go into it knowing that there's going to be some references to religious stories of the past or faith or whatever it may be tied in with the subject matter. And I thought I was okay with it. But again, I think this Chuck Dixon, I think, could have done a lot better. Again, the art, touch, I liked it, but I think some of the things I kind of point out, I was like, if those weren't so meh, might have bumped the story up a little bit, but still, the Chalice, 2.5, average read I don't want to say average read at best, but average read could have been a lot better. I think the ending was really fleshed out, even with the art as is. I think that we could have been talking a 3.5, but since the ending was so quickly wrapped up and left with some, especially just the way Raish gave up, was like, okay, got it. That's a good point, Talia. Let's go home. I was just kind of like, really? But either way, would I get it? This is one of those out of print ones. I seen it on eBay for like $30-$40. This is the hardcover version at the time it was released, $24.95. And the thing is, this is a very short read. You'll read this in less than an hour. Put it in context. Here's the Black Mirror. Let's try that again. Black Mirror. This story. The Dark Knight. Batman the Dark Knight. 5 issues. Same length. So, yeah. I'd say unless you have no other Batman stories to really go after if you're just the casual Batman fan, I really wouldn't prioritize this. If you come across a good deal and you come across it, great. Unless you're the Batman completionist out there for your Batman timeline or your collection, whatever. Yeah, not really all that necessary. Yeah, it is what it is. So anyway, glad to talk this book. Next week, in addition, Detective might talk about another one. Finally got my hand on Night Cries, so might want to talk about that one next. I don't know. There's so many of these bad trades I want to talk about, but definitely Detective. And time being, we'll see what I can get in next weekend as well. So until that video comes out, take care.